Hello everybody, welcome to TCOM 408 Online. You've made it to video number 13. This is Dr. Mike. How are you today? I hope you are well, and I hope you are coping during the coronavirus outbreak of 2020. It's been a historic and interesting time, that's for sure. Hey, in this video, and this could be the most important video of the whole semester, I want to talk about the moral agents and how they make the ethical decisions. The moral agents, of course, are the ones who have to make the ethical judgments. And this is whether they're acting on their own volition or as a representative of a company or an institution. The moral agent. In the classroom presentation, you will be playing the role of the moral agent. And I'm sure during the course of your life, you will serve as a moral agent. Now, according to experts, moral thinking should be based on some systematic process. We need some systematic process, some broad formula, a framework, a model. And we can use a process to come to decisions based on reasoning. So what I want to do is introduce you to some decision-making models that help you with your reasoning and your decision-making. Now, I will be talking about 3 approaches or models designed to help you make good ethical decisions. And you must use one of these models in your classroom presentation. But I also hope that you will apply at least one of these models through the course of your entire life. So here's the 3 models. Again, you need to focus in on one for your presentation. We've got Day's SAD model, Potter's box model, and Box model of ethical decision making. 3 different approaches. Now, I would strongly suggest that you use Louis Day's SAD model in your decision-making and your classroom presentation. Louis Day is a professor from Louisiana State University who specializes in media law and ethics. He's written a lot about media ethics. And he has come up with a wonderful, systematic, ethical decision-making model that has 3 steps or 3 stages. 1, 2, 3. So here's a summary of the 3 steps. Step 1, you define the situation. You get a good, clear picture of the situation and the ethical dilemma. Okay. Step 2 involves a thorough analysis, and I'll explain how to conduct that analysis. And then step 3 involves actually making the decision and being able to defend your moral decision. So let's look at these 3 steps in a little more detail. And again, I encourage you to use this model. Okay, step 1 is to define the situation. So you should provide a basic description of the facts. You should also try and identify the important principles or values that might guide your decision making. And finally, you need a clear statement of the ethical issue or question at hand. Now, sometimes this is difficult to summarize the ethical matter into a clear, succinct, simple statement. My advice to you would be to frame it as a question. Is it ethical to such and such? That's the simplest, clearest way, I believe, to state the ethical issue, to pose it as a question. Now, step 2, this is the hard thinking, this is the analysis. This is when you have to start weighing the competing principles and values and trying to identify which of the values and principles or obligations are the most important. Here you might consider any kind of external factors that may weigh into your decision. A good external factor right now might be the coronavirus pandemic. Another part of the analysis should involve an examination of your duties to all of the stakeholders, not just the employer and the shareholders, but all of the stakeholders. In the analysis section, you want to discuss all the applicable ethical theories. We've talked about these theories, the wisdom of the ages. And perhaps you want to identify some alternatives, maybe whether or not the golden mean applies here. All right, after a thorough analysis, the last step involves actually making a decision, rendering the moral agent's decision, and being able to back up that decision, to defend that decision on the basis of some moral theory or philosophy or viewpoint. So that is Louis Day's three-stage model: SAD, situation, definition, analysis, and then decision. An incredible model that I think can guide your decision making when it comes to ethics. Let me introduce you to another model that's quite often used in the world of ethics. This one was developed by a man named Ralph Potter, who's a professor of ethics at Harvard Divinity School, or professor emeritus of ethics. That means he's retired. Okay, Potter developed something called the Potter Box, and this is an interesting framework that you can use for making ethical decisions. It uses 4 stages or categories which seem to be universal to all ethical dilemmas: defining the situation, identifying the important values, figuring out your principles, your loyalties, and then making a decision. So step 1 in the Potter Box is to define the situation and identify the ethical question at hand. Step 2, you identify your values. What do you stand for? What principles and values and obligations are important, paramount for you? In step 3, you identify your guiding principle or philosophy. Again, we talked about the wisdom of the ages, the various ethical viewpoints you can use to back up your ethical decisions. In step 4, you consider your loyalties. Who or what is most important for you to stand up for? And then finally, in step 5 of the Potter Box, you'll make the decision. And this decision must be justified and based on the previous steps. So again, a summary: define the situation, identify the values, the ethical principles, choose your loyalties, and then make a decision. The Potter Box, an ethical framework that's worth considering. Are you hanging in there? I've got one more model to share with you, a very simple model. This comes from Sissela Bach. She's a Swedish-born philosopher and ethicist, Sissela Bach. And she has offered a simple 3-step model of ethical decision making. Okay, 3 simple steps. And I kind of like this one as an alternative that's not used very often, and you'll see why. So step 1, consult your own conscience. Step 2, seek expert advice for alternatives. Step 3, this is the difficult part, discuss the problem with those involved. If you consult your own conscience, if you talk to other experts to get their opinions about how to handle the situation, and then maybe even discuss the problem with those directly involved, then you are probably in a pretty good position to make a strong moral decision or moral judgment. So those are 3 approaches to ethical decision making. Again, you must use one of these 3 models in your classroom presentation. And hopefully you'll apply a systematic approach to thinking your way through ethical situations throughout your entire professional life. Okay, now again, you want to incorporate some of these ethical viewpoints that we've talked about. And these are still relevant and important today. And I encourage you to consider the last 2 on the list here: social responsibility ethics and professional ethics. We've talked about these in a previous lecture, and we'll talk about them more in upcoming videos. And again, when making an ethical decision, I encourage you to consider obligations and duties to all of the stakeholders, not just the shareholders. So who are the stakeholders? Well, it's the moral agent, self, your individual conscience, but it's also the object of your moral judgments, including the audience. You have obligations to your employer, your financial supporters, the shareholders, obligations to your profession, your colleagues and peers, obligations to society and the public interest, and obligations, I think, to the environment, to the planet and sustainability. So, use the models, use the ethical viewpoints, use the list of shareholders and stakeholders to make your decision. But remember, ethics, again, is not a science. These are not formulas or algorithms that you can use to come to instant moral decisions. No ethical theory, no approach is perfect. But these frameworks are useful for helping you make ethical decisions. So please study these frameworks carefully, closely, especially Louis Day's SAD model. All right, I hope this will help you with the upcoming assignments and with the challenges that you might face as you work your way through life during some interesting times. That's all for this lecture. Please take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again real soon. So long.